energy transformation.
Right.
Yeah.
But that helped me anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thanks. In your songs and art, what were some of the greatest influences of the 60s, do you think, that you see in your music then and you see in your music today?
Who influenced me, you mean?
Or who and what? What of your generation?
Well, not that much of my generation influenced me. I was influenced by the McGuire sisters, from the generation before, really. I was influenced by Rachmaninoff. I was influenced by Edith Piaf, by Billie Holiday, by Miles Davis. But that didn't come out in my music initially. Initially, I learned the songs of Judy Collins in order to make $15 extra a weekend at art college. I didn't begin to write my own music till I crossed the border into this country in 1965. And then the people who encouraged me to set poetry to music were Leonard Cohen and Bob Dylan.
What did you see when you came into this country in '65?
Educated consumers. First of all, I went into kind of a culture shock. Oh no, Werner's ginger ale is better than Canada Dry, and of course the Chevrolet. The educated consumers.
It's true, it's true. Do you consider yourself a child of the 60s, a part of the 60s? In what way do you consider yourself that?
Well, I haven't said I did yet.
Yeah.
Child of the 60s. No more than I'm a child of the 80s or the 90s, or, well, I guess you couldn't call myself a child anymore, although I am in an odd way. All artists are perennial children, but what do you mean by that? A child of the 60s, I don't know.
Well, some people, when we've been interviewing a lot of people around the country, a lot of people have said, I don't want to talk about the 60s, it has nothing to do with me, I don't want to think about it. And other people say, oh, the 60s were my life. It really changed me. John was saying, as a matter of fact, that when he got into the music industry, he was very straight looking, had very short hair and dressed in suits, and then all of a sudden, the spark caught him, and it changed his life.
Well, gee, there was a spark to the 50s. Let's just review the decades. I'll review the decades with you as I see them. In the 50s, that was in my culture anyway, that was the first peace and prosperity. You know, the dirty 30s were hard times where I came from. It was the Dust Bowl. The 40s, they went straight from that into war. The 50s was peace and prosperity and Leave It to Beaver, and everything was nice, and I was an anti-intellectual. You know, it was like, let's party, you know, let's dance, let's have fun. It was a kind of a mindless free period in a certain way. The 60s were a pensive time. After the shooting of Kennedy, you know, you had to say, what is happening here? You know, this doesn't fit the Leave It to Beaver picture. Then I think with the psychedelics, which are sort of an accident, you know, that FBI agents on fringe people accidentally or intentionally took them themselves and turned into hippies here and there. I think that afforded people a view of nature, those who survived it, and there were some casualties. I think it did a little harm and a little good. I think it was a head-expanding experience. Certainly, I would be surprised that people who took it, you know, even if they were urban-born, did not come away from it with some kind of ecological feeling. In that way, the 60s, I would say, influenced me. There was a lot of phoniness, too, you know, under the banner of we are all egoless and we love everybody. This was not necessarily true, but at least it was a positive fad, unlike the 80s where it was positive to be negative and an ostrich, you know, negative and blind for a while, and then finally that kind of went out of vogue, and anything socially critical was viewed as negative, and that was a funny pocket where everybody had their heads buried in the sand. We seemed to be coming up. So in the 60s we felt we could change the world. We were young, youth tends to think that. In the 70s, we realized we couldn't, so we said, okay, let's change ourselves. By the end of the 70s, everybody realized they couldn't do much about themselves either, so they said, okay, we can't change the world, we can't change ourselves, let's get rich. So everybody just screw the other guy, you know, for greater capital gain, and we had a horrible decade. The 80s were the worst decade I've ever lived through. My parents, I guess, have seen worse. The 90s, we were, you know, maybe that's why we're so romantic about the 60s.